Hello everyone. I do videos occasionally because I'm not a professional YouTuber. It's not where I derive my main source of income. I just do videos as and when the idea strikes me. I used to be in professional filmmaking, was for 20 years. So you can see some of my comedy sketches from years and years ago. Those were the ones I produced and directed myself, but I worked on a lot of other people's things. And so I don't feel the need to become a professional YouTuber. Having said that, I've got an idea, and I wanted to look into the tactics of the progressive left. So I can't do this in one video, so I'm going to do it as a series. Provisionally, I've got 10 chapters to this, so we'll start off with chapter 1. Now, for me, I have studied the tactics of the progressive left and kind of other groups online, seen how they do debating, what tricks they use, what methods they use, and trying to understand what the opposition is driving at, what are their aims, and what will they do to secure those aims. Now, experience has taught me this. Way back in the day, I used to debate the Atheist Plus movement and also conspiracy theories, primarily the moon landing conspiracy theory, but I've debated other ones like Flat Earth and all the popular ones. And I noticed that there's considerable overlap between atheism plus conspiracy theorists and the progressive left when they're trying to debate you, when they're trying to advance their ideas and their beliefs. There's a lot of overlap in the debating tactics, and some of you might be familiar with these tactics, but I wanted to share my insights and share my knowledge based on experience, how this works. Now, I've done a lot of political live streams with on various channels with various people, and quite often people say, this is mad what the left are doing, this is mad, they're crazy. Well, I slightly disagree. I think there is some madness to it, but at the same time, there's a method to it. It's far more calculated and thought out in advance, even though it may not make sense to people in the centre and on the right. But it makes perfect sense to them. And I don't underestimate the left for the most part. I realise what damage they can do if they go unchallenged, and they have various tactics that they use to try and throw people that they're trying to debate with off. So I'd like to share my insight and share what I think they're trying to drive at, what they're trying to achieve when you get stuck into an argument or debate with someone on the progressive left. Now, when I say progressive left, they're they feel like the foot soldiers, the front line. They're the first ones you're going to encounter on social media. But I also include in this socialists, Marxists, and communists as well, because they all kind of they're different strata of the left. But again, their debating tactics and their methods and what they're driving at is often remarkably similar. So let's start off by trying to understand where their tactics, their strategies originate from. And it comes from a place nearly 100 years ago. In between the two world wars, there was a rise in a lot of left-wing philosophers, particularly in continental Europe, centering around France, Germany, and Italy. They were the main places. There was one from Hungary as well. But the names may seem familiar to you. So Jean-Paul Sartre, for example, Foucault, Gramsci, Lacan, Deleuze, Althusser. So you might have heard of these names, and some of them are known as the Frankfurt School of left-wing philosophy. Now, most of them were able to escape fascism and Nazi Germany in the 1930s, and they settled in the United Kingdom. Well, first of all to France, then to the United Kingdom, then to the United States of America. A few of the French, like Sartre, kept their heads down and were able to survive in occupied France. And so some of these people exist mainly in the 1920s and 30s, but some of them, they went on in the post-war 50s, 60s, 70s, and some of them into the 1980s to continue their writings and continue their work. So those are the characters. But so what did they have in common? How did they originate the tactics, the debating tactics of the left, of the aims of the left? Well, the first thing is that they had a definite target, something that they wanted to destroy, something they wanted to bring down, and that is the bourgeoisie, or the bourgeois. Now, that is obviously a French word, but I don't think in the Anglosphere we quite understand what it means. In continental Europe, the meaning is quite implicit, but here particularly in the United Kingdom, we've tended to say the bourgeois are a kind of pretentious, status-obsessed middle class, and it's not exactly. It doesn't quite translate in the way that the French left-wing philosophers in particular thought. Think of it more like to a Frenchman or a German or an Italian of that era. Bourgeois means the everyday. It means the standard, the norm, the accepted, the kind of the stable building blocks of society, as it will, because the middle class are now setting the agenda in a kind of post-French Revolution world, in their eyes, and that's something you'll notice if you read these philosophers, is that they don't really conceive of history before the 18th century. Hardly surprising, given that the French Revolution was supposed to be the year zero. In fact, briefly, France experimented with an alternative calendar and time system that accepted 1789 as the year zero. And you see that repeated in Pol Pot's Cambodia as well. So they discount pretty much anything that happens before the 18th century in terms of history. It's just not a factor. It's not something that they factor into their thinking. So they're attacking the bourgeois. And to them, the bourgeois means everything that is accepted as the norm, as the standard for society, which they don't actually say the middle class established those norms. They will say that the upper aristocratic ruling class, in conjunction with the middle class and in conjunction with the aspirational working class, have created these norms, and that they all have to be destroyed in order for the proletariat. So in the minds of these 20th century left-wing philosophers, the intellectual, the enlightened intellectual, who is naturally a socialist, a Marxist, a communist, they inspire a band of the proletariat, and they come together and they overthrow and destroy the bourgeois in what Sartre calls the totalization. I mean, he talks a lot of nonsense, Sartre, when it comes to political philosophy. But you'll find this. You'll find Lacan reduces language to a mathematical formula. It's pure gibberish. Lacan's writings are just pure gibberish and also monumentally boring. But everything is to be attacked. Now, does this sound familiar with something from today? So, what would these left-wing philosophers back in between the two wars consider bourgeois? The family unit, owning your own home, having a garden, going to work, come home from work, get a pay packet, going away on holiday. In short, it's doing everything that we take for granted, that we think is normal. So it's better to view what they term as bourgeois and translate it into a concept that those of us in the Anglosphere can understand. It's Middle England, it's Middle America, it's the normies, okay? That much disparaged group from the online right, the normies, but that is what they're trying to destroy, the left. Anything that smacks of the bourgeois, smacks of the norm, the standard. Now, they consider this standard to be kind of imposed. These days, it's translated as imposed by patriarchy, back in the 20s and 30s, they weren't talking about a sort of male-dominated patriarchy anywhere near the extent of what's being talked about now, but they have different villains that they believe are responsible for the creation of the bourgeois, the normal, the everyday, the middle American, middle Britain ideal. And they refuse to look deeper in history to say, well, how come the nuclear family is a thing? It doesn't just date from the 18th century. It's something that through entire human development, human existence, has come into being. And the fact that things like people having their own houses and having their own things that they can call their own is an idea that has succeeded, that has worked, and has been accepted. So they don't accept that people might like normal society. They don't. The left don't think they don't accept that if people said, no, we just want to be left alone and get on with our lives and have families and have our own places, and we're in a nice little community, but we don't live in each other's pockets, and we don't sort of worship the almighty state. We'd like the state to provide us with a bit of defence, law and order, maybe a few gibs, but not controlling everything. They don't accept that. They don't accept that this state of affairs has been is a process that has taken tens of thousands of years to arrive at the point we are today. So that's what they mean by bourgeois, and that is to be attacked. And you see it today. Prime example. There's a guy called, I'm just going to look up his name. It's James Wong. James Wong is a horticulturalist. He often writes for The Guardian. He's on the BBC quite a bit. He's a fellow at Kew Gardens, the Royal Horticultural Society. And he often says things like having a garden is white supremacy, or don't call plants growing in Britain that have been here for centuries native plants. There are no native plants. We have to dismantle this kind of colonialist white supremacy narrative about our garden. So he's a prime example. Anita Sarkeesian is another prime example. Remember her when she said everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it out all of the time. This is the same tactic, the same line of argument that was used nearly 100 years ago by the Frankfurt School and their kind of offshoots and their brethren in across the left in continental Europe in that time. So it's the same thing. So what happens is that the thing to understand about the left-wing tactics, the first thing you need to understand, it is an attack on everything. So don't rest on your laurels. Don't think they'll never come after my hobby. They came after knitting, for goodness sake. So everything that is around you, everything that you see when you go out to work, when you take your kids to school, when you go out to the local park, when you go to get food shopping, everything is up for grabs with the left. So you cannot assume they're never going to come for your nice little wholesome part of the world. They will. So you need to learn how to defend yourself and protect the things that you love. So that's the end of chapter 1. Understanding that the left want to attack and destroy everything.